There is a question that has occupied serious minds across every civilization that has ever produced serious minds. What are human beings actually like? Not what they should be like. Not what they would be like if the right institutions were in place or the right education was universal or the right moral framework governed every decision. What they actually are. In the specific, observable, consistent reality of how they behave when their interests are engaged and their circumstances press upon them. Most of the answers produced across history have been comfortable ones. That human beings are fundamentally good, corrupted by circumstance. That they are rational, misled by passion. That they are cooperative by nature, made competitive by scarcity. That with the right conditions, the right leadership, the right arrangement of society, they would be something better than what we observe them to be. I do not find these answers useful, not because they are entirely wrong, but because they begin from what we wish were true rather than from what we can observe to be true. And a man who navigates the world based on what he wishes were true about the people in it will be surprised, repeatedly and expensively, by what they actually are. My name is Niccolò Machiavelli. I spent 14 years watching human beings pursue what they wanted in one of the most concentrated and competitive environments that the world has ever produced. I watched men of genuine virtue destroyed by men of considerably less virtue who understood something the virtuous men did not. I watched men of modest capability outlast and outmaneuver their more gifted rivals simply by seeing clearly what the gifted men preferred not to see. I arrived, through those years of observation, at a set of conclusions about human nature that made me uncomfortable at first, that I tested against everything I observed, and that I eventually accepted not because they were pleasant but because they were accurate. Today I share those conclusions. Not to make you cynical. Cynicism is as much a distortion as naive idealism, simply in the opposite direction. But to give you the clarity that comes from seeing human beings as they actually are, so that you can navigate the world they actually inhabit rather than the world you might prefer them to inhabit. That clarity is the foundation of everything else I have written and spoken about across this channel. Positioning, patience, silence, desire, reputation. All of it rests on an accurate understanding of what drives the people you are dealing with. Today we build that foundation properly. The first and most fundamental observation I made about human nature is this. People are primarily driven by self-interest. Not exclusively, not without exception, but primarily, consistently, and with a reliability that no amount of expressed altruism or genuine good intention fully overrides when the pressure becomes significant enough. I am not describing wickedness. I am describing a structural feature of human motivation that operates regardless of character and regardless of intention. The man of genuine goodwill still prioritizes his own survival when survival is genuinely at stake. The man of genuine generosity still calculates, beneath the generosity, what the giving costs him and whether he can afford it. The man of genuine loyalty still reconsiders that loyalty when the cost of maintaining it exceeds what he believes the relationship is worth. This is not cynicism. This is observation. And the practical consequence for the man who understands it is significant. When you are trying to understand why someone behaved in a particular way, or trying to predict how someone will behave in a future situation, the most reliable starting point is not their stated values or their expressed intentions or their genuine desire to be a good person. It is their interest. What do they stand to gain from this? What do they stand to lose? How does the outcome of this situation affect their position, their resources, their status, their security? Answer those questions accurately and you will understand their behavior with a precision that appeals to their stated values never produces. I applied this principle throughout my career in Florence and it served me with a consistency that eventually made it my default lens for understanding any human situation. Not the only lens, but the first one. The one I reached for before any other. What are the interests here? Whose interests are served by this outcome and whose are threatened? Where is the alignment of interest that makes cooperation natural and where is the conflict of interest that makes cooperation fragile? These questions, answered accurately, illuminate the actual structure of any human situation with a clarity that no amount of good faith assumption produces. The second observation concerns what I would call the gap between what people say and what people do. This gap is one of the most consistent features of human behavior I observed across my career. And it is one of the most consistently underestimated by men who are not accustomed to observing carefully. People say what they believe will produce the best impression in the moment of the saying. They say what they think they should believe, what they believe, what they wish they believed, and what they believe will make the listener think well of them. All of these are genuine in their way, but none of them are reliable guides to what the person will actually do when the moment of action arrives. Behavior, under pressure, tells the truth that words almost never do. I observed this in diplomatic negotiations across my career with a regularity that became entirely predictable. A prince would declare his commitment to an alliance with a sincerity that seemed entirely genuine, and then act in direct contradiction to that commitment the moment his interest shifted sufficiently. He was not necessarily lying when he declared the commitment. He was expressing a genuine intention that his future circumstances rendered unenforceable. This taught me to pay far more attention to what people had done than to what they said they would do. History is the record of behavior. And behavior, especially behavior under pressure and at genuine cost, is the only reliable evidence of what a person will do in similar circumstances in the future. The man who has betrayed an alliance once will betray another when his interests sufficiently align with betrayal, not because he is uniquely disloyal, because the conditions that made betrayal his chosen response are likely to recur, and his response to similar conditions is likely to be similar. The man who has maintained his commitments under genuine pressure at genuine cost has demonstrated something about his character that his stated values alone could never demonstrate. He has shown that his behavior and his words align when alignment is expensive, and that alignment, demonstrated under cost, is the most reliable evidence of future alignment available. Watch what people do, especially what they do when doing the right thing costs them something real. That is where character is actually legible. The third observation concerns fear, and it is the one that most people find most uncomfortable. Fear is a more reliable motivator than love, gratitude, or loyalty. I wrote about this in The Prince in the context of whether it is better for a prince to be loved or feared. My conclusion, which has been misread and misquoted across 5 centuries, was not that fear is preferable to love as a matter of preference or morality. It was that fear is more reliable as a motivator because it does not depend on the continued positive disposition of the person being motivated. Love and gratitude and loyalty are genuine, but they are contingent. They persist as long as the conditions that produced them persist. A man loves you while you give him reasons to love you. He is grateful while the gift remains vivid in his memory. He is loyal while the cost of loyalty remains manageable and the benefit of loyalty remains visible. Fear operates differently. It does not require your continued generosity or your continued presence or the continued vividness of past benefits. It requires only the continued credibility of the consequence that the fear is pointed at. I observed this distinction with painful clarity in the political instability of Renaissance Italy. Princes who governed through the love and gratitude of their people found that love and gratitude to be an unreliable foundation when circumstances changed and the people's interest shifted. The love that had seemed deep and genuine evaporated with remarkable speed when a more advantageous alternative presented itself. Princes who governed through fear, through the credible establishment of genuine consequences for betrayal or opposition, found their position considerably more stable under the same shifting circumstances. Not because fear is a more noble motivation than love, because fear is a more consistent one. This principle applies far beyond the political domain. In any situation where you are depending on the continued motivated behavior of other people, the question worth asking is whether that motivation rests on something contingent or something more durable. The most sophisticated version of this insight is not to choose between love and fear but to understand when each is operating and to build your position in ways that do not depend entirely on either. The man whose relationships rest entirely on others' positive disposition toward him is fragile. The man whose relationships rest entirely on others' fear of him is brittle. The man who has built relationships where genuine mutual interest, genuine respect, and genuine consequence for betrayal all operate simultaneously has built something considerably more durable than either alone. The fourth observation concerns ingratitude, and it is the one I find most men resist most strongly because it contradicts something they prefer to believe about the people they have helped. Men are ungrateful, not because they are wicked, Because gratitude is a feeling that diminishes over time regardless of the initial sincerity with which it was felt, while the memory of grievance tends to persist and even intensify across the same period. I observed this so consistently across my career that I eventually built it into my strategic calculations as a fixed assumption rather than a variable one. The man I had helped would be grateful for a period. The length of that period depended on the magnitude of the help and the proximity in time to the receiving of it. But at some point, the gratitude would fade to the background of his experience, and what would remain would be the relationship as it currently was rather than the relationship as it had been at the moment of greatest generosity. And if the current relationship included any grievance, any disappointment, any instance where I had failed to meet an expectation or had prioritized my own interests over his, that grievance would carry a weight disproportionate to its actual magnitude, precisely because the gratitude that might have counterbalanced it had already faded. The practical lesson I drew from this observation was not to stop helping people. It was to stop depending on remembered help as a source of ongoing influence or loyalty. If you want something from someone, the relevant question is not what you did for them in the past. It is what you can do for them now, or what they stand to lose if they act against your interests in the present. Past benefits, however significant, are poor leverage. They fade. Present interests and present consequences do not. This is why I always counseled the cultivation of ongoing usefulness over the accumulation of past favors. The man who is currently indispensable is far better positioned than the man who was once very helpful. The first has something that the other person needs today. The second has a memory that is fading. Be indispensable now. The history of what you have given is less reliable than you wish it were. The fifth observation concerns ambition, and it is perhaps the most double-edged of all the forces I observed operating in human beings. Ambition is the engine of everything significant that human beings have ever built, and it is the cause of most of the catastrophic failures I witnessed across my career. The same force that drives a man to build something lasting drives him, if unchecked by accurate self-assessment and strategic patience, to overreach, to move before he is ready, to want more than the current moment can provide, to risk what has been built in pursuit of what has not yet been secured. I observe this pattern in men of genuine capability more often than in men of modest capability, because the genuinely capable man has real grounds for his ambition and therefore finds it more difficult to accept the limits that circumstances impose on what is possible in any given moment. He has built something real. He has demonstrated genuine capability. He knows, with evidence, that he is capable of more than his current position reflects. And this knowledge, which in one form is the accurate assessment that should drive continued building, becomes in another form the impatience that drives premature action. The man reaches for the next level before the current level is fully secured. He deploys resources that should have been held in reserve. He takes risks that the accumulated position should have been used to avoid rather than to multiply. And he loses, sometimes catastrophically, what he had built through exactly the same energy and ambition that built it. I saw this pattern in Cesare Borgia, whom I admired greatly for his strategic capability and whom I watched make, at the crucial moment, the error that cost him everything he had built. His ambition, which had served him brilliantly across the years of his ascent, became, in the moment when fortune shifted and caution was required, the force that prevented him from accepting the limitations of the changed circumstances and adapting accordingly. He reached when he should have held, and everything went. The management of ambition is therefore one of the central challenges of any life directed toward genuine achievement. Not its suppression, its direction. The discipline of channeling the energy of ambition toward the patient building that produces lasting results rather than the impatient reaching that produces brilliant ascents and catastrophic falls. This is the distinction between virtue and mere capability. Virtue includes not only the capability to achieve but the wisdom to know when to reach and when to hold, when to deploy ambition fully and when to restrain it until the conditions are right. That wisdom is rare, and its rarity is why so many capable men produce so little that lasts. The sixth observation concerns what I will call the herd instinct, and it is one of the most practically significant things I observed about human nature in large groups. Men, individually, are capable of independent judgment. Men in groups almost never exercise it. In groups, the dominant response to any situation is determined not by the careful individual assessment of the available evidence but by the reading of what other members of the group appear to believe. Each individual member of the group is simultaneously signaling his belief to others and reading their signals to calibrate his own expressed belief. The result is that the expressed belief of the group frequently has almost no relationship to the considered judgment of any individual member of it. It is the aggregate of signals, each calibrated to what the others appear to believe, producing a collective position that may represent no one's genuine assessment. I observed this in the councils of Florence with a regularity that I found both fascinating and frustrating. Men who, in private conversation, held nuanced and intelligent views about a given situation would, in the formal council, express the view that the apparent consensus of the room seemed to favor, not because they were dishonest, because the social pressure to align with the apparent consensus was stronger, in the moment of the formal gathering, than the intellectual commitment to their private assessment. The practical consequence for the strategist is significant. The apparent consensus of any group is not a reliable guide to the actual beliefs of its members. It is a guide to the social dynamics of the group. And the man who understands this can influence the apparent consensus of a group by shifting its social dynamics, without necessarily changing any individual member's private assessment at all. This is the mechanism behind what I observed in every effective political leader of my era. They did not win arguments by presenting superior evidence. They won them by shifting the social dynamic of the room in ways that made their position the apparently dominant one, causing the individual members of the group to calibrate their expressed views accordingly. This is neither admirable nor contemptible as a fact of human nature. It simply is. And the man who understands it navigates groups with a precision that the man who believes groups think the way individuals think never achieves. The seventh and final observation is the one that underlies everything I have described today. Human beings are consistent. Not perfectly consistent. Not without exceptions. But consistent in the way that matters most for anyone trying to understand and navigate human behavior. Consistent in their fundamental motivations, their characteristic responses to pressure, their recurring patterns of behavior across different situations and different relationships. The man who betrays when the cost of loyalty becomes high enough will betray again in similar circumstances. The man who retreats when pressure is applied will retreat again. The man who rises to genuine capability under conditions of genuine challenge will rise again. The man who cannot tolerate sustained uncertainty will act prematurely again. This consistency is the foundation of any genuine ability to understand and predict human behavior, not the detailed prediction of specific actions in specific circumstances. The broader prediction of the range of responses available to a given person, given what their established pattern of behavior reveals about the motivational structure beneath the surface. I built my understanding of the princes and ambassadors and merchants and political figures I dealt with across my career through the patient accumulation of observations about their characteristic patterns, how they behaved under pressure, what they prioritized when their priorities were forced into conflict, where the lines were that they would not cross and where the lines were that they crossed more easily than they admitted. This understanding, built across time through careful observation, gave me a model of each person that was far more useful than the official account of who they were or the impression they were trying to project. And it is available to any man willing to invest the sustained attention that it requires. Watch people across time. Watch them under pressure. Watch them when the cost of their stated values becomes real. Watch them when their interests conflict with their expressed commitments. Watch them when no one of consequence is observing. What you see in those moments is who they are. Not who they wish they were. Not who they appear to be when the social stakes favor a more flattering presentation. Who they are. And who they are is who they will be in the situations that matter most to you. I want to close with something I consider essential to everything I have described today. Understanding human nature accurately is not the same as becoming cynical about it. The man who sees clearly that people are primarily driven by self-interest does not therefore conclude that genuine friendship is impossible, that genuine loyalty does not exist, that genuine goodness is always performance. He concludes that genuine friendship, genuine loyalty, and genuine goodness are rarer and more valuable than the man who assumes their universality ever understands. When a man maintains his loyalty at genuine cost, when a man acts generously against his immediate interest, when a man tells the truth when the comfortable lie was available, these things are not negated by the knowledge that they are exceptional. They are elevated by it. They are the more precious for being the product of genuine character operating against the structural tendencies of human psychology rather than flowing easily with them. The man who understands human nature clearly loves his genuine friends more deeply than the man who assumes friendship is the default. He values genuine loyalty more highly than the man who expects loyalty to be unconditional. He is more moved by genuine goodness than the man who does not understand how much it costs. Clarity about human nature is not the enemy of human warmth. It is the condition for a more honest and therefore more durable version of it. See clearly, judge accurately, and love the genuine things more deeply for understanding how rare they are. That is the whole philosophy. And it is available to any man willing to look at what is actually there rather than at what he would prefer to see.